Hey guys, this is a video on plot and all the elements of plot. So make sure that you're following along in your reader writer notebooks and taking notes as I am. So the first thing that we're going to go over is plot and what is plot in general. So plot is the storyline of the story, okay? So thinking about plot helps you identify the main events of a story so that you can retell it. All right, so once again, plot is the storyline of a story, and actually we're not gonna really think about it as a line, but rather as a mountain. Okay, so here is our plot mountain, and it relates to each part of the story. The first part of plot is the exposition, and the exposition is the beginning of the story where the characters and the setting are told, the background information is exposed, and the conflict is introduced. Okay, so the beginning of the story is the exposition. Right there. That's what starts us off in the story. And we have characters and setting introduced. Okay? Also, in the exposition, we have the conflict. So the conflict is the problem in the story. You cannot have a story without conflict. So let's say someone wrote a story saying Joanne's mom asked her to go to the grocery store to get milk. So Joanne rode her bicycle down to the grocery store and she got milk and put it in the fridge. That's not a story, okay? That has no interest. Now, if you said Joanne's mom asked Joanne to go down to the store to get some milk, but Joanne never showed up to the store. Now we're interested in the story because we want to know what happened to Joanne. There's a problem. Something happened in the story where Joanne could not get to the store. So conflict is the problem in the story. And it's a part of the exposition, okay? So that's when our story starts to get interesting. It's what drags us in to the story so we can continue to read the story. On the plot mountain, you have a part where it rises, okay? Where you're rising to the top. And that is where the rising action or actions happens, okay? So this part of the story is the rising actions of the story. Depending on how long your story is, depends on how many rising actions there are. So your rising actions are incidents that create suspense, interest, or tension. We always say the tension is rising, okay? We're starting to get to the part of the story where things are getting more and more and more and more interesting, okay? So this is the part where suspense and tension rises. It's easy to remember because we're rising to the top of the mountain. And at the top of the mountain, we have the climax. And the climax is the most intense and most exciting event in the story. most intense and most exciting part of the story. Okay? So think of like Transformers movies when all the explosions happen and all the Transformers come together. Or think of Harry Potter movies when the big battles happen with the magic wands and all the magic and all the drama is happening all together all at once. Right after the climax is when we go down with the falling actions. Falling actions. Okay? So climax has happened and we have our falling actions. Falling actions are all the parts of the story that happen right after the climax but before the resolution. Okay? All events after climax before the end. And you're starting to see now why it is a mountain. And then finally, we have at the end the resolution. And the resolution is, like I said, the end of the story where all the loose ends are tied together. Any unanswered questions should be answered, of course. If they're going to have a sequel, then they might leave you on a cliffhanger so that you can come back for the next book or movie. But resolution is at least the end to that storyline. So resolution is the end. And a fancier word or more elevated word for resolution is called the denouement. Denoument. Okay? And that's just another name for the resolution or the conclusion to the story. Maybe one final lesson is learned very quickly at the end by the characters. Those are all of your plot elements, okay? So plot is the storyline, and we like to think of it as more of a story mountain. So you have your exposition, which begins the story. It exposes information. We have our conflict, which gets us into the story and makes us continue to read. It's the problem. We want to know, how are they going to solve this problem? And as they solve the problem, characters make decisions, incidents happen, and rising actions are leading us to the most intense part of the story where the climax happens. And that's the most intense, most exciting part. Directly after the climax happens is the falling actions. The tension is beginning to fall, okay? Our heart is not beating as fast. And then finally we have the resolution, which is the end or the denouement of the story, and maybe a final lesson is learned in the story. This is the plot mountain, and we can use it to write stories and identify important parts in the story so that we can retell it.